Hello, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us on a Friday morning for this webinar to learn more about the NIHR Postdoctoral Award. We're going to start presentations shortly that will be given by my colleague Richard Millam, and then we also have two of our selection committee chairs here to give you some hints and tips about what the selection committees are looking for in the postdoctoral award applications. We will get started. Can we move to the next slide, please? So just a little bit of housekeeping quickly to say that your mics are muted and videos are off, but you can use the chat, and specifically the Q&A is where we'd like you to put questions. So you can be typing questions into the Q&A while the webinar's ongoing, and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can at the end. There is a live transcript option that you can turn on and off. And you can also upvote any questions that you see in the Q&A that you'd like to hear answered at the end of the webinar. Brilliant, thank you. Next slide. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Richard, who's going to tell you a bit more about the NIHR Postdoctoral Award.
Thanks, Karen. So good morning, everyone. So as Karen said, this is really just to provide an overview of the Simplified Award, and it's brilliant to have so many of the team and some of our committee chairs to share their insights today. The award is part of our new Simplified Award structure, which we've developed to streamline our awards and make them more straightforward to understand and access. And under the approach, previous similar awards have been grouped by career stage. So there's now a pre-doctoral award, a doctoral award, and a postdoctoral award. And if you're familiar with our previous award structure, then the postdoctoral award replaces the Advanced Fellowship, or AF, the Advanced Clinical and Practitioner Academic Fellowship, or ACAF, and the Advanced Local Authority Fellowship, the ALAF. Applicants now will use the same application form, and NIHR colleagues will stream your application to the correct committee based on your professional background and research setting. As you might anticipate, this is a postdoctoral award, i.e. it's for individuals that have recently completed or will soon be awarded a PhD, but it may also be suitable in other contexts as well, such as following a significant career break post-PhD. This is a career development award, and it's designed to help individuals establish themselves as independent researchers and become recognised leaders in their areas of specialisation. Applications are welcome from all health and social care and public health professionals and researchers, and that includes registered practitioners and individuals that are working in local authorities and local authority associated settings. With respect to eligibility, you must hold a relevant PhD or MD, or have submitted your thesis for examination at the point of making your application. And for those applicants, you must have been awarded your PhD or MD by the time you attend an interview as part of the application process. You must be proposing to undertake the award at one of the following types of organisation, so a higher education institute or HEI, an NHS body, or a local authority or other provider of health or social care services, and those organisations should be based either in England or a participating devolved nation. You mustn't already hold a chair position at the point of making an application, and for clinical applicants, you must have completed relevant pre-registration training. We've also changed from using our previous application and award management system, Aramis, to the new NIHR Awards Management System. This is what the login screen looks like, and the link to access is also presented here. Please do keep in mind that if you've previously registered with Aramis, you'll need to register a new account in the new system. Next, so talk about what's available through the award. So firstly, as mentioned, the award is designed to offer you a bit of a step change in career post-PhD, leading you towards research independence and leadership in your area of specialisation. The award provides funding for salaried time to undertake postdoctoral research and a tailored academic and professional development programme. Awards can be between 2 to 5 years in duration, with flexibility around arrangements for working less than full time, i.e. between 50 and 100% whole-time equivalent or WTE. Awardees are also permitted to apply for a second postdoctoral award in due course, should they wish to do so. And that's typically with a total duration of support across both being limited to 8 years whole-time equivalent. If you're an active clinician or practitioner applicant, or if you're employed in a local authority setting, then you have the option to request up to 40% of your time to be dedicated to professional practice time and professional training and development, which will be covered by the award. There's no requirement to include professional practice development time in your award, but if you do choose to do so, then your application should explain how that activity connects to and complements your proposed research. And just to say, as with many things that we'll cover today, further details, particularly around the expectations for the associated arrangements with that, are available in the guidance notes on the NIHR website. More specifically, the award offers funding for your salary as the lead applicant, including clinical service or practice time where applicable, a research project, a support post to assist with your research, including training and development budget, the cost of the tailored academic professional development programme for yourself as the applicant, and an annual conference budget as well, which is typically an allowance of about £2,000 per annum. And again, as I said before, full details of funding and guidance for the financial aspects of the application are available through the NIHR website. In terms of timescales, so the first cohort opened to applications on Wednesday this week, so the 26th of March, and the deadline for submission of applications is 1 o'clock on the 3rd of July. Following that, applications will be checked by NIHR for eligibility and then assessed by a funding committee to establish a shortlist of applications, which will then undergo expert peer review. Following that, further shortlisted applicants will then be invited to an interview, which we anticipate will take place early in 2026, and successful applicants will then be able to commence their award from April 2026 onwards. If the current competition doesn't quite fit within your aspirations and timescales, please do rest assured there will be another competition for the award later this year, probably around autumn time. So please do keep an eye on the NIHR website for details in due course. Something else important to keep in mind, so NIHR partners with charities to offer jointly funded awards, and these provide the awardee with the support of 2 funders, and you get to become part of 2 research communities to support both your award and your next career steps. Charity partnership applications go through exactly the same review process as all other applications. And as presented here, these are the charity partners for the inaugural cohort of the Postdoctoral Award. Further details about these opportunities are available on the Postdoctoral Award funding opportunity page on the NIHR website. So our committee chairs are better placed to offer guidance in terms of what they're looking for in an application, but just to cover a few key aspects that you'll need to include. So as a high-level summary, we're looking for ambitious individuals with a strong interest in health and social care and public health research, and your application must clearly show how this award will help to develop your skills and knowledge, how it will support the next stage of your career, and that your proposed research falls within the NIHR remit. When you complete the application form, you'll need to include a contracting organisation, which, if your application is funded, would have overall responsibility for supporting successful completion of the programme of work that you've detailed in your application. And if you're a clinical or practitioner or local authority-based applicant intending to undertake practice time and development within award hours, you'll also need to include a partner organisation. The pages linked on this slide include details of key considerations when you're trying to choose those organisations, and particularly also details about things that you may want to consider in terms of the potential configuration of what those organisations might look like in real terms. Just to reiterate from earlier, you must be proposing an appropriate configuration of these organisations where applicable. So an HEI, an NHS body, a local authority or other provider of health or social care services, and these organisations should be based in England or a participating devolved nation. So as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of the award is very much to help drive a step change in your career and to help you to develop research independence and leadership. You'll need to provide details about your career to date in the application form via the provision of a narrative CV, which takes the form of a downloadable template. And you can also highlight any contextual factors where applicable. For example, it could be where you've taken parental leave or highlighting barriers that you've faced to getting involved in research. You'll also need to provide details with respect to your proposed research project, as well as how you plan to work with people and communities and factor in aspects associated with research inclusion. You should also provide detail on your proposed training program and how that will set you up to succeed in delivering on your proposed award activities, but also how it will set you up for your future aspirations. With respect to your proposed research project, that must be within the NIHR Academy remit for personal awards. Overall, that's early translational experimental medicine, clinical and applied health research, and social care research. And a clear and plausible path to patient or service user, carer, or public benefit must be demonstrable. Research that tests whether application of new knowledge can improve treatment or patient outcomes and has obvious direct potential benefit is within remit. That might include application of known biomarkers or prognostic factors to refine and test novel therapeutic strategies. But research that aims only to elucidate mechanisms underpinning disease or identify risk factors for disease or prognosis, including search for biomarkers, is out of remit. So very importantly is including detail on those that will support you to succeed. The application form will ask for details of proposed mentors, and mentors should be appropriately chosen to best support your proposed award activities and research. If you're a clinical or practitioner or local authority-based applicant, and including associated practice and development time, you'll need to include details of the associated supervision. Please also keep in mind that heads of department from your proposed organisations will be required to provide sign-off of your application and contribute to a statement of support. More information and guidance around these aspects can, of course, be found on the Postdoctoral Award page of the website. With respect to budgetary aspects, there is again a wealth of detail around finances and how to complete the budgetary aspects of the application form available on the website. So we really do recommend that you review all of that information in full prior to submitting your application. There are some budgetary caps to be aware of. Those are associated with conferences and staff costs. So please do ensure you stay within those caps. And as you'll need to provide thorough and detailed costings as part of the process, you'll need support from your finance team to gather the necessary detail. So you can see here the arrangement of committee chairs for the award. And as Karen mentioned earlier, we're fortunate here today to be joined by Professors Adamson and Kadam to share their insights with us about what they would look for and what committees look for in applications. Umesh, should I invite you first? Would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Richard. So, hello, everyone. I'm Umesh Kadam. I'm Professor of General Practice and Public Health Research at Exeter. I'm one of the co-chairs with Eileen Kaner from Newcastle for the Advanced Fellowship, which is now called the Postdoctoral Fellowship Scheme. So what I want to tell you is about what, as chairs, we look for in a strong candidate and strong applications. So to pick out the key elements that Richard has set up, the first thing we look at is the person. So the person in terms of what they've done to date, and that includes academic metrics as well as activities around clinical engagement, patient engagement, developing themselves in terms of their scientific potential. Just to be clear, we're not necessarily looking for people who have lots of academic metrics. What we're interested in is in the trajectory, having acquired their doctoral degree, and in terms of direction. The second element is around the project. Well-framed project really demonstrates not only the scientific questions, but the idea that they've been generated by the applicant, that there's enthusiasm and passion in terms of the clinical ideas, the questions, and how they might benefit the healthcare system as well as patients and carers. People often spend a lot of time focusing on the projects, but it's important to understand that the application will cover you as a person, then focus in on the project. Training and development has to be designed to support your development. So as chairs, we're really interested in what you've done to date and how this fellowship award may provide you with a step change in terms of your training and development. Often what we see is applicants give a good account of training packages for their project development. But what needs to be considered is also the personal development. And those might include not only leadership course, acquisitions of skills and expertise, but also activities such as patient engagement. The projects and you as a person will be supported by your academic clinical networks. And it's important that when you think about composing your mentorship team and your collaborative team, is that again, it not only supports your project, but it supports you as a person in terms of developing through the fellowship. Sometimes what people consider are their usual networks rather than really thinking about how these networks are going to grow you as an individual, as well as the project and the programs that you are really keen to develop. The institutional support is important. One of the things you want to consider is sometimes institutions put in several applications. And we do see fairly generic institutional statements. It's important that in your fellowship development, you have good conversation with your mentors as well as your head of departments, so that a specific institutional support statement can be drafted rather than a generic one. The critical part of any fellowship development is patient and public involvement right from the very start to the heart of the project. The fellowship that I chair with Eileen, there are two panels. We consider applications for any discipline, any methodology, any clinical context. And whatever your topic area, PPIE engagement has to be at the heart of it, right from the start of your ideas into your project proposal, as well as your dissemination plans. Despite a keen awareness of this, we often see that the PPI plans could be much stronger. And the final thing I would say to you is that all these areas, the person, the place, the training and development plan, the institutional support, and the PPIE plan are what's considered as a whole in terms of assessing your application. It may sound near impossible, but it's very, we continually see excellent applications which are enthusiastic, passionate, and authentic. So it is very achievable. For the next presentation, I'm going to pass you over to Professor Adamson. Thank you.
Thank you, Umesh, and good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to check that you can all, that's the camera's working appropriately. Somebody will shout if not. I'm Ashley Adamson. I'm based at Newcastle University, where I'm a professor of public health nutrition. I'm also the director of the NIHR School for Public Health Research and the new RSS Specialist Centre for Public Health, which I'll say a little bit more about shortly. So I chair the panel which has previously been the Advanced Local Authority Fellowship panel. But this will now be extended to be a local authority social care and public health. So it's going to be the Local Authority Social Care and Public Health Committee. And so we will be receiving applications from people working in both practice in social care, public health, but also people coming from academia. So their host being an academic host. My deputy chair in the panel is Yvonne Burks, Professor Yvonne Burks, who's at York University, and she works in social care. She's a professor of social care, and she also is the director of the School for Social Care Research. So we have good expertise across the panel, both in public health and social care, with a good either grounding in practice, people have worked in practice, continue to work in practice, or a good understanding of the context of the practice. And we will be extending that panel to make sure all of that's covered as our remit of the panel has increased. So I think, or the other thing I should say is that I'm trying to embellish on some of the things that Umesh has said. And you mentioned around public involvement, and of course all of the panels include lay members. So it's really important that your application is accessible to lay members as well. So thinking about the lay members on the panel and how you've integrated with the public or patients in your application. So all of the chairs, and I think not everybody's fully aware of this, all of the chairs post an annual report. And so please do look at those, because we put quite a lot of work into those to make sure that we're reflecting on what we've seen over the last year and things that people have done really well and things that people really need to think about going forward. So make sure you access those reports in preparing your application. I'm going to mention a few key points. Many of these are embellished within the reports. Umesh has mentioned some of them, but I think particularly I want to think about the focus of the topics of your project. So think about how these are embedded. How are they strategically important to the partners, either the local authorities, the NHS, if you're working within the NHS, or the voluntary sector? So what is it about what you're going to deliver that is going to make a difference to either practice, policy, to patients, or to people's lives? Okay, so what's that impact? And I think the question that sometimes we get from particularly people in practice, they go, well, that's really interesting, but so what? So make sure you've answered the so what question when you write your application for your project. Think about how it's connected and what your connections are. And I'm going to come on to impact in a little while, but it's really important that that begins right at the beginning, because that translation of your finding into practice actually starts with you asking the right question. So that's about having those connections and making sure your question is grounded in whatever practice it is, and maybe thinking about how you co-produce that with either with practice, policy, or public, or ideally a combination of all of those. Umesh has mentioned the strong support from the host organisation, and it is really important that that's specific to you and not just generic. So how will your host organisation support you, and why you? So, why are they supporting you as against everybody else? What are they going to do for you? So I think that's something you really need to work with. There'll always be what's the general environment, and that will be in most of those statements, but the specific bit about you. I saw a couple of questions in the chat as I was listening earlier on, coming up around mentorship. And thinking about your mentors and having that strong mentorship. So if this is coming from public health or for some social care, I would expect that you would have mentors who are practice-based as well as academic-based. I saw a question about whether they needed to be internal or external to your organisation. They can be both. So you can have more than one mentor. You just need to be clear what the role of those mentors are and what they're going to bring to you. And I personally would advocate an external mentor as the value of having somebody that is, you can be completely separate from your own organisation, and think about your career development and plan perhaps from a slightly different perspective. We've already touched on your training plan. But again, thinking about how that's really tailored and individual to yourself and to the project. So if you're thinking in there about including new skills that you want to develop, then make sure you're doing the training before you're going to use those skills. I know that sounds obvious, but that actually sometimes people have them in the wrong order. And if you're going to develop new skills, have opportunity to use them within your fellowship. So within that, the scope of your award, but also thinking about the future. So how are you going to equip yourself for your next step in your career? And that's particularly around personal development. So we've already mentioned around leadership, but other aspects of personal development, where it might be developing skills in public involvement, for example. So thinking about leadership and other skills that are about your personal development. Make sure you put your plan for your training alongside the plan for your project. So I think we've highlighted already that this is not just about your research project, it's about you too, but making sure that you've got that if you've got a Gantt chart, a project plan, put your training plan alongside that. And so you're helping the panel to be able to see how the two parts integrate and connect. And then I think the other thing I would just want to mention is to make sure that you've got that pathway to impact, that dissemination plan. How are you going to do that knowledge exchange, that dissemination? And that's about making sure you're answering the right question in the first place, so you've got people on board with you as you go along your journey. That you've asked the right questions, so somebody wants to hear when you've actually got the results, and also through your personal development and through your fellowship, you've built the networks and used those networks and taken people alongside you, so that actually when you have that big ta-da moment, somebody actually is really interested, and then that helps them get translated into to practice, whether that's with patients, public policy, or wherever your work fits. So I think I'm going to stop there. We've got lots of questions, so that gives us plenty of time to get through some of those questions. I'm sure many will be for the academy, but you might also have some of them specific that myself or Umesh can answer. Thank you, Richard.
No, thank you, Ashley, and thank you, Umesh. Absolutely fantastic insights. Thank you so much for sharing those with us. That's absolutely brilliant. I'll invite people to put their cameras on, should they wish to, so we can see each other as we go through the questions. And thank you so much to all of you for all your fantastic questions. You can see them flying in. Just a quick reminder, please do use the thumb icon to mark your favourites, and we'll do our very best to answer as many as possible. But I think it's been mentioned in the chat, you're very welcome to get in touch with us separately by email or phone outside of the webinar as well.
Brilliant, thank you, Richard. Okay, so I'm looking at the most upvoted questions we've got in the Q&A, and there's one with 22 upvotes to say, for the Advanced Fellowship, there were 2 subcommittees that reviewed applications grouped by career stage, i.e. earlier postdoc versus more independent postdoc. How will this be taken into account within the 3 new subcommittees? So that's a great question, Emma. So we are not planning to change that kind of arrangement where in the postdoc group. So we've got a committee called the Postdoctoral Researchers, and there's one called the Local Authority Social Care and Public Health, and one for Health and Care Professionals. Now, normally the number of applications we've had in the past has been very much higher for that postdoctoral group than what was the Advanced Fellowship. So they have had to split into 2 groups and take the more experienced in a different panel to the earlier postdocs. And we do intend to keep that going. Now, for the other 2 panels, they haven't received as many applications in the past as the Advanced Fellowship. So we haven't had to necessarily have split into 2 panels, but I could imagine that those other 2 panels might find it useful to organise the applications by earlier to later career stage when they come to their committee meeting. Did anyone else want to add anything to that, Richard?
No, I think you've summarised that really well, Karen. Absolutely. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. So the next most upvoted question was, is a clinical trial unit support recommended and funded, for example, for pilot or feasibility trials? Rosie and Richard, do you want to come back on this?
The high-level answer is yes, where appropriate and applicable and fully justified.
Brilliant. Okay, so let's go to the next one with 18 upvotes. Do all mentors need to be based in the UK, or can you have an overseas mentor? So we don't have any restrictions on where your mentors can be, as long as it's possible to contact them and have a good connection with them. Richard, do you want to add something?
Yeah, just say from an NIHR perspective, there's no restrictions, as you're saying, Karen. It's very much up to applicants to propose an appropriate arrangement of mentorship and ensure that they are able to provide time and support to you to deliver on what you're proposing to do. Thank you.
Brilliant. The next one, also with 18 upvotes, is the Advanced Fellowship used to be able to fund the fellowship holder, a research associate, and a PhD student. Is this still the case? Rosie, do you want to tackle that one?
It absolutely is, yes. And there's full details about all of those posts, including the shared staff support and CTU costs that Richard mentioned earlier on our Postdoc Award page. So if you have a look there, it details, yeah, exactly what you can ask us for.
Brilliant. And that's actually also the next question as well. So we've ticked off 2 in one go there. So we've also got a question about, under the eligibility criteria, what constitutes a relevant PhD? Richard, do you want to tackle that?
Well, I think that's for individuals to define more than anything. It's going to be very much context dependent. I don't think NIHR really specifies anything in the guidance around what that truly should be defined as. So we would recommend that you speak with your proposed host organisation, so contracting organisation, partner organisation, and your mentors to understand that a little bit more, maybe pick that apart in more detail.
And perhaps it's just a case, if your PhD was in a very different subject, you need to tell the committee what your path has been and how you've got between there and where you are now and what you want to do next. So it's a good thing that you'll be able to justify in your application. So is there a limit how many years we can be into our postdoc roles to apply for this? So there isn't, as long as you're not already a chair, there is no higher limit on how many years you can have been a postdoc for. Is there any NIHR funding available for PPIE in developing the application? RDS used to offer small grants for this, but not anymore. Ashley, I think this might be one you'd like to take on.
Yes, thank you. They do in fact offer that. RSS do have a resource for public involvement in developing your application. Of course, now there's also there's the generic RSS, but there's also specialist centres for in RSS for both public health and also for social care. And I think Rosie was going to put the links for each of those in the chat. And I would suggest you contact them if your project is social care, go to social care. Public health, go to the public health one, and otherwise go to RSS. But they do still have budget for public involvement. There is some that comes from this now. There's a central hub, a coordinating centre, and they have budget. And then some of the RSS have their own budget too. But all of the RSSs can draw from the central coordinating centre. So there is absolutely budget for that public involvement work in developing your application, but you do need to go through the RSS or the specialist centres to access that.
Brilliant, thank you, Ashley. Okay, so can we have a link to the chair's annual reports, please? I'm sure the team will be able to put those links in the chat, and if not, they definitely will be linked on the award page on our NIHR web pages. Richard, did you want to?
Yeah, just to say they're on their way if they're not there already. So please stand by. They're coming. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So the next most upvoted question is, with many universities struggling financially, are you still expecting that if over 3 years in duration, there is an expectation of significant additional host organisation support? For example, this could be providing additional research assistance, PhD students to the fellow if successful. So we haven't changed what our awards offer, and that is quite clearly delineated on the award page and the associated guidance. Anybody who would like to come in on this? Anything else to add? Okay, hopefully that's clear for you. So given the importance of PPIE, not only during the award but pre-award, are NIHR able to provide any funding pre-award? So we've covered that one, sorry. Okay. Could we talk about the differences between working with people and communities and the research inclusion sections? Okay, so working with people and communities is an update to what we used to call PPIE. And you can find links to both of these pages on the NIHR website, which are incredibly helpful and take you through some of the things to think about when you're putting these bits into your application. Anybody else want to come in on a bit more of picking apart those two? Ashley?
A comment. I think you have to think about research inclusion from the perspective of both of who you will be including in your research as participants, and that you get it, that actually that means that you're not just that you're actually making effort to get those people who are seldom heard of, seldom included, which might need more work. So it's about your participants, but also your public involvement, public or patient involvement has got a good representative sample of people taking part in that. I think we've got some people who work with public involvement who become almost professional public partners. We need to stretch that and actually make sure that it's people who've got that more lived experience of what you're working with. But then I think research inclusion also refers to how we include our researchers and having a diverse pool of researchers. So if you're thinking about recruiting staff to your award, how are you going to do that to make sure that actually everybody has opportunity to apply for that? Or if thinking about how you, as a future research leader, think about making sure the research workforce has got diversity, and we've got inclusion too. So it's not on all of those levels, which makes it different to the public involvement perspective.
Brilliant, thank you. That was very helpful, Ashley. Richard, did you want to come in as well there?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you've both just said there. So the guidance on the website is brilliant, and that's there from NIHR as a bit of a steer and a guide to help you, but it's not the be all end all, because a lot of what we're talking about here, these aspects are very context specific. So it's very much going to require people to go away and have conversations locally with their mentors, with their host organizations, with that policy and guidance in mind, to really understand how, in the context of what you're proposing to do, all of those aspects will work.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so next most voted question are details of success rates published for previous award rounds. So, Rosie, did you want to tackle that one?
I'm not sure, to be quite honest.
Sometimes we put them in the chair's report, don't we? We have that information in there. Okay, Brill.
It's been included in previous reports, Rosie. So, Karen. So I think it is in there.
Yeah, brilliant. And there's also a great NIHR website that shows you everything that we've funded in the past. The NIHR Funding and Awards page, I think it's called, that you can have a look at previous successful applications and see, you know, at least the plain English summary of what they propose to do. So, next question is, when a submission is unsuccessful, is resubmission allowed? And if so, oh, it's disappeared. Sorry. Is resubmission allowed? And if so, is there a minimum time interval that needs to be allowed? Yes, so we do have some guidance around reapplication, don't we? That says that you can't apply for the same award within the same year. So that would be a minimum time interval. And then if you have 2 unsuccessful applications, we do specify a longer time before you apply again. So next question, is there a limit as to how many years post-PhD applicants need to be? So we've answered that, there isn't. Are the committee chairs able to give some examples of what host support looks like? Any thoughts on that?
If I might come in. Karen, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think it's what Ashley said earlier in terms of institutional support. What good looks like is the support is about the individual rather than just the environment. And I think earlier people were asking that in sort of financially constrained times, how can universities best support the individual? I mean, there are different kinds of support, which is around personal growth. Universities can also have sort of more commitment to ensure that the successful applicant, enters a professional, more secure pathway. PhD studentships are still, well resourced relatively. So it isn't that we are always looking for sort of big financial commitments, but we are looking for commitments which recognize the individual, and that significant NIHR investment will sit alongside the university commitment.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Himesh. What do you define as a support post? Rosie, do you want to take that one?
Yes, so this is often a research assistant. So somebody can support your proposal, and they could be a PhD student. You could have a PhD student and a research support. A research assistant if you wanted. So yeah, that post is for 3 years full-time equivalent, and there's also a training and development budget available as well.
Brilliant, thank you. So the next one that we haven't answered really is about HEI partner host. This no longer seems mandatory if hosted by an NHS trust. Can you elaborate on whether still having both of these would make an application more competitive? Richard, do you want to take that?
I'll try. So it's again, I'm sounding like a stuck record today. It's very context dependent. It depends what you're proposing to do. You need to make sure that whatever you are proposing to do in your application is appropriately supported. And therefore, you need to make sure you have an appropriate arrangement of organisations that can offer you that support. And I would suggest that an HEI and an NHS trust, as examples, will offer different sorts of support and play different roles in a potential award. And so it's really important to have a think about what that means. I don't know if any of the chairs have any additional flavour they'd want to add to that at all.
I guess I would just like to add from the perspective of if it's not trust. So if you are working where your work is going to be relevant to a local authority, so whether that's public health or social care, whether they're your host organisation or not, I would expect you to have some involvement with them. And ideally, if you're going to be working closely with, I would expect there to be perhaps a nod to that in the letter of support. So you can have your letters of support come from more than one and have a joint letter of support. And I think that's something to really think about in terms of who your hosts might be. So you might be hosted by the local authority, but it's really important that you have that link with the academia. So I would look for a joint letter of support there, and also vice versa. So if you're based in academia, but you're going to be, what you're doing is going to need social care or public health to deliver it, then I would expect that also to be included. So you don't have to have both as host, and you can host either way, but to have that included in your letter of support and clear, I think is important.
Brilliant, thank you. So next question that's got a lot of upvotes are unsuccessful applicants who get through the shortlist stage offered feedback to strengthen future applications. So they will see the anonymised comments of the reviewers that have looked at their application up until that stage, and they'll see what specific comments they had about it. They will also be expected to really think about that feedback and really be seen to have done something about it upon reapplication. So that's something the panel would expect to see in future applications from you, that you've taken that on board and you've done something to address the feedback. Now, this is a nice one. Is there an upper limit for the training programme? Richard, do you want to take that?
I think the broad answer is no. What you have to remember, and this is true of any costs that you include in the application, is that any cost must be fully justified, and it's worth keeping in mind value for money. I mean, all of our awards are funded via the public purse, so it's very important that you ensure value for money is taken into account when you are planning your budget. But there isn't a strict limit that I'm aware of.
Brilliant. Okay. And any kind of caps that we have will be clearly indicated in the award page. So another question here is it possible to propose or suggest new charity partners in addition to those that we have listed on the NIHR webpage? Rosie, did you want to take that?
I would say yes. Yeah, if you have a personal relationship with a charity partner that you would like to be involved in your application, absolutely put them down as your partner organisation, add them into your proposal, and potentially provision of support. Yeah, we'd absolutely encourage it. I guess the main difference is that the opportunities that are available for each competition call are kind of secured by us at NIHR, so we know that the partners are interested. But yes, if you have someone that you would personally like to work with, then yeah, please go ahead.
Lovely, thank you. Next one, what sort of things are excluded, not considered in the training and development plan if you're going down, well, what was the advanced fellowship stream? So anything that would be excluded, probably as Richard said, it's about justifying well what you've put into your training and development plan and why it's relevant for the research that you propose and for your personal development as a researcher. I think that's all that we would kind of indicate to you, that you need to just make the proper case for what you've put in and why you've costed it to the award. Can we provide a summary document of what has changed, key differences between the advanced and postdoctoral award? That would be helpful to some, both applicants and RFS advisors. So that's, I guess we can put some kind of key points together and maybe on a slide when we send this round, that we could send round with an additional slide at the end to say key differences. That might be helpful. Are there limits for the number of awards per institution, or are some institutions more or less likely to be funded than others, levelling up versus funding in the golden triangle? So we don't have any limits in this scheme for how many applications an institution can support. And as to whether they're more or less likely to be funded, it's about the case that they put forward, and as Umesh has clearly said, about how well they're going to support the applicants that they've said they will. So I don't think there's anything else to add on that one. Supernumerary practice hours. The guidelines imply that clinical practice hours should be supernumerary. If I wanted to still maintain some usual practice hours, would I then need to apply for the award part-time to facilitate this outside of the award hours? So there is still the possibility to include up to 40% of your award time in clinical or practice time or clinical or practice development, and also the same for local authority applicants. So there is no difference there. The section on the award page should be able to tell you a bit more about that. How do applications from methodologists fit into the 3 assessment committees? Methodologists would typically probably have previously applied to our advanced fellowship route, but it might be that you're a methodologist that's specifically working in social care or public health, in which case now it might be more appropriate for that application to go to the local authority social care and public health panel. But generally, probably methodologists, if not working in that specific area, would go to what was the Advanced Fellowship Committee and is now the Postdoctoral Award Committee. Leadership skills training is often needed, and NIHR provides training at different levels of leadership, but we can't be sure if we're accepted for those as they're often competitively awarded. What approach should we take to including leadership training in our applications? Richard, did you want to take that?
Well, probably better that the chairs come in, because they'll no doubt have seen this many, many times. But I think the rule is to put what you think is going to be the most appropriate choice in your application, but consider contingency plans. There are always risks with these sorts of things. What are you going to do if those plans don't come to pass?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay, can we include an MSc as part of our training program to support developing specialism in a new area? I think we would commonly see people take individual elements of a master's, perhaps not a full master's. Rosie, Richard, any experience with this? Lauren, sorry.
Yeah, I wouldn't say no, but I think it's about making a really justified case. You need to be really clear about why you wanted to do it and what the value add was to you in order to make that a convincing case for the committee. But there's not a rule against doing master's or master's level training as part of the award if it's appropriate.
Brilliant. Okay, so how will the decision be made for an application from a health and care professional, not a doctor or dentist, as to whether the application is reviewed by the HCP panel or the postdoctoral researcher panel? What are the key differential parameters? So we are going to, once the applications come in, we'll be looking at several factors that determine which committee that we think that application should best fit. One of them will be professional background, but it will also be about the research setting that you're working in. It will also be about your career aspirations. So there'll be several factors at play. If you are doing, if you're a health and care professional and you're doing research in an area covered by health and care professions, then probably you would go to the HCP panel. I can't see anything specifically on significant host organisation support for awards over 3 years, except for covering support post costs over 3 years when justified. Can you confirm? No, I don't think there's any specific guidance on host support over 3 years that we've kind of covered that in previous questions. Does the new postdoctoral award system include the Global Advanced Fellowship? No, that's still going to be a separate scheme. Is there a gap between applying for a second postdoctoral award? So if you've already had a postdoctoral award and then you're coming in for your second one, would Claire like to consider that question?
I can say something if you want.
Yeah, please.
So ideally, I think what the intention is that they're sort of immediately following on from one another. However, there's nothing to say that people wouldn't want to have a gap in their careers depending on their individual circumstances. And I think that's where things like the contextual factors section of the application form comes in. So you can just explain what it is that you're doing and why you've done what you've done and how that leads into what you're proposing to do next.
Lovely, thank you. So there's another one here. We'll share the PowerPoint to everybody who's signed up to the webinar. And does NIHR have clear guidance on dissemination plans and impact pathway planning specifically for this fellowship? So there are some helpful links within the guidance to talk about impact and dissemination that you can follow and take a bit more of a read across the NIHR website. Okay, so next. Are non-clinical applicants looked upon equally as favourably as clinical applicants? For example, digital health engineers with an engineering background. Umesh, you probably see this all the time in your panel.
Very much so. Just to be clear, there's a real focus to include people from all different professional backgrounds and considering the academic context or the clinical context that they come from. So we take that into consideration. For those people who come from the unusual backgrounds, as I would call it, well, not commonly seen backgrounds, a scientist in healthcare, what I would suggest is a compelling case in terms of the story and in terms of how they want to grow, so they can still be very competitive, because it's, we don't see individuals from those backgrounds often. So we're very keen to support people with good ideas, whatever the background.
Brilliant, thank you, Umesh. I think that's a really nice thought to land on there, that we're keen to see lots of different people from different backgrounds apply to our awards. And we look forward to hearing more from you. If you have any specific questions about your own circumstances, you are welcome to contact the office. There's an email address that you can see on the award page and some phone numbers there if you prefer to speak to someone on the phone. We're a very friendly team, happy to answer queries. And we appreciate we haven't got through everything today, so apologies for that, but hopefully you've heard some useful answers along the way. Ashley.
Sorry, can I just say a couple of things? One that sort of pick up several things in the chat. Please do everybody be aware of the pre-application awards and the DSE awards, because you are eligible for those. If you're applying for an advanced fellowship this way, the pre-app is just as that. So look at those, because they're a really good opportunity. Somebody mentioned about applicants from outside the Golden Triangle was the term that was used. The really important thing is, if you get shortlisted for interview, make sure you prepare for that interview for wherever you are from, and get that support from wherever. And that's really, really important. And someone asked about a second award. Make sure you can evidence you've delivered on your first award before you apply for a second award. So a couple of comments there. Just wanted to get in there, Karen. Thank you.
That's really helpful. Thank you, Ashley. All right then. Well, thank you for all our panelists today, and thank you to everybody who's been on the call, who's been listening in and